Thank you very much, sir, for your time this evening. So can you quantify the increase in cases? I mean, over 400 cases since your offices opened last week. How many more people is that than usual?
The biggest part, thank you very much for having us, sorry. The biggest component of the cases that we've experienced, it's in connection with the Section 189A, what we normally call the large-scale dismissals. And it's followed by, of course, the single employee affected called the Section 189 cases. And as a result of that, our numbers have grown because it's a mixture of things. But that leads, it's the retrenchments. What follows after that, it is the money-related cases. I'm talking about cases where an employer decided to deduct money from the salary of the employee, or secondly, because there's no payment at all as a result of the COVID-19 lockdown, or in some cases, people are confused because the company just closed down. And others just get an SMS and say, we won't pay you next week, or that the company is closed. And the bigger grievance in those type of cases, when you listen, is not so much about that. While it is a serious issue, it is because that somebody says, look, the manner in which I was informed about this case, it was quite undignified. It defies my dignity. So I want to get this matter sorted out. And in that circumstance, the bigger problem also is that as we try to facilitate and resolve some of these cases, some of these enterprises have literally closed down. And even if you make an order against any company, there's no one you hold the order against. And even if you want to get the money for the employee, the enterprise is non-existent. Even some of them that are existing, they can't afford to pay that amount that we're talking about. So the best way that we're dealing with this is to try to find a common position and trying to negotiate and trying to settle this type of dispute between the employer and the employee. It's much better that way, especially disputes that involve cases where the relationships between the parties are still existing. So far, we're sitting at about 6,000 cases since the 1st of April on the cases that we got. And the total number of employees affected just on retrenchments, it's sitting at 28,000. And that's not even the full picture exactly of what we're looking at.
So with job losses and retrenchments expected to soar in coming months, could that result in a backlog or delays in finalizing cases with your office?
No. I am very proud to say at this stage that I've got very brilliant staff, both commissioner and non-commissioner. How they deal with the queues, it is with dignity, with respect, because they understand that people in the queues are hungry, they have anxiety, and they have fear. Then I have commissioners who said, we are prepared to work over the weekend if we have to, because we understand the plight of our people during lockdown and the impact that this financial dispute will have on them. So we will deal with that. And if you see our queues, we have long queues in the morning, especially in Johannesburg that we spoke about. But by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, it's done. It's inclusive of thermostat assessment, registering the names, and sanitization, social distancing.
It's best to come after lunch then. Now, a number of unions have responded emphatically, saying they will defend members whose employers try to use the COVID-19 pandemic to unfairly dismiss workers. How will the CCMA go about protecting the rights of workers during a time when they're already facing brutal conditions?
The constitutional obligation that we have, which also is carried by the foundations of the Labour Relations Act, is job security. And we understand that well, because that's not just the call of the CCMA, that's the call of the constitutional call, which is the apex court in terms of constitutional matters. We can assure the public that any matter that is brought before the CCMA, where the procedural and substantive fairness of the matter is put before us, we will deal with it effectively and expeditiously. We're very clear about that with our commissioners.
Understandably, many businesses are also facing very difficult times and retrenchments may be unavoidable. How should they go about the process to make sure they do so fairly and according to the legal procedures?
Firstly, you have to follow your company process and policies on how to deal with disputes. Secondly, if the matter is not resolved, it must be referred to the CCMA. But our experience has shown that, you see, when it comes to employees and facing this type of a dispute, it's not so much about the process as such. It is about honesty. It is about disclosure of information. So if you put out your cards out to your employees and say, we are facing a serious financial meltdown, and if we don't put together and do this thing work, we're all going to fall. We are in the same boat. Usually employees buy into that. But one thing that is very clear, when an enterprise falls, everybody falls. So the responsibility to save the enterprise is for both the employers and the employee. So disclosure of information, honesty and following process, both internal and external, is the best way to do it. And when you, for example, in terms of retrenchment, there's a notice we call Section 189, subsection 3 notice, which talks about the possibility of a retrenchment. Some cases you find that when that notice is issued, people have already made a decision that they're going to retrench. That's not what the law requires. That's not what the policy requires. That's not dignity requirement of the Constitution requires. When you issue that notice, you must truly and genuinely say a possibility of retrenchment exists, which means that both parties must engage to try to find a way to avoid retrenchment. If that fails, then you go to the second phase of the Section 189, which is trying to mitigate the adverse effect of that. That's what must be done.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thanks for your time, CCMA Director Cameron Morajane.